To understand what makes America different, one needs to know what the differences are between the various forms of government. The easiest way to explain this is to use a block diagram for each type of government, positioned along a freedom scale because each provides different amounts of freedom. And these are the terms that our founders used. On the low end of the freedom scale is the autocratic form of government that's been around for thousands of years and comes in many forms. The common thread is that the government makes and enforces the rules, and the citizens have whatever amount of freedom that the government grants them, which typically isn't much. On the other end of the freedom scale is no government or anarchy. It theoretically provides 100% freedom, but you wouldn't want to live there because there are no rules, so people are free to harm each other. Think Somalia. And in the middle is democracy, which is at least 50% free because the majority rules. The majority elects the government, which can force the will of the majority onto the minority. Our founders called this the violence or tyranny of the majority, and they were right. Socrates was killed by a democracy, and Hitler was elected by a democratic process, and 56 million people lost their lives. Democracies have been around since the time of the Greeks, around 500 BC. Then came the Romans, and today about 60% of countries are democracies, but we were born as a republic. Our founders knew that democracies are based on majority rule, which historically abuse the rights of the minority and decay and eventually die. As John Adams said, democracies never last long. They soon waste, exhaust, and murder themselves. There never was a democracy that did not commit suicide. The founders, armed with ideas from philosophers, set out to solve the problems of a democracy. Their solution was to base the federal government on the idea that natural law comes from God and therefore cannot be altered by man. But we did not learn about natural law in school. Here are 3 ways to think about natural law. The theistic view is that it is the 10 commandments like don't murder, steal, bear false witness, or covet. Non-theistic philosophers such as Aristotle and Cicero said that these are the things that any moral person knows to be true. Thirdly, John Locke came up with a method of defining natural rights and law based on freedom when he said, paraphrasing, "Man should be free to the extent that one man's freedom does not impinge on another's." Our founders felt that the purpose of the federal government is to ensure man's endowed rights of life, liberty, and property. And they designed what they called a republic to accomplish this end, and documented the method in the Constitution. This diagram represents what our founders gave us, a republic as defined by our Constitution. It is further along the freedom scale because no man rules over another. Note 2 citizen boxes in a democracy and only 1 in our republic. Natural law was implemented by features defined in the Constitution, including a defined role for the federal government, divisions of power, federalism, and a Bill of Rights. Our republic, as conceived and with slavery removed, made our citizens sovereign with respect to any other man, as no other system in man's history. This is the reason natural law is important, because it prevents one man from ruling over another, and it provides the unchanging and universal values and principles needed for a stable and civil society. As a result, the U.S. has the oldest living constitution and the highest standard of living of any other major nation. And one can argue that the world's greatest progress occurred in the first 120 years after the ratification of our Constitution. In other words, history has proven what our founders gave us is the best form of government man has ever created. Thank you for watching. This is Jeff Krupp.